Hello everybody. Today we're going to add role-based authentication to our ASP.NET Core MVC application. Here we're going to add a couple of sample roles and assign those roles to a couple of users and see how we can use policy-based authentication schemes to give access or revoke access to certain pages for certain users. This lecture is a continuation of my previous lesson on .NET Core Identity Customization. If you'd like to see the lecture, please click at the top right now, as the code used here is inherited from that lecture. So let's jump right ahead and start the lesson. Okay, so to customize the roles and add and manage roles, first we're going to do some preliminary steps. The first thing is to go to our login controller, which is a Razor page here, and we're going to go to our post async. So we're going to modify the password sign-in function. We're going to extract some of the functions outside and add it ourselves. So let's decompile this function and see what it does. So let's go to its source. So here what we do is we first check the database for the email, the username. If it's null, then we return a failed symbol. If not, if the user exists, then we go and sign in to this function, and this function checks for password and checks to sign in, and then finally if we succeed, then we sign in or we use two-factor. For this example, we're going to stick with sign in. We will not see two-factor. So if we don't have a two-factor, this is the code that will get executed. So if there's no login provider, so this is where we'll come here. We'll basically sign in with claims, and then this will be the default claim, which is this is the default claim that we're going to use to authenticate our user. So now let's go back to our login and modify this code. So as you can see, I modified this into its subfunctions. So first, instead of directly calling our password sign-in async method, first we check the database if the email exists, and then we check the password if it matches or not, and then finally when it succeeds, we sign in with the default claim of AMR and password. Okay, now let's see if our changes work. Let's build a project. It's refreshed, so let's refresh the page. Let's go to login. Let's log in with our sample user here. Login, and it works. Awesome. Okay, now let's see how to implement policy-based authentication. So here, to implement policy authentication, we're going to add a simple claim here. We're going to call a new claim. We're going to call it employee number, and then we're going to give it a simple value for now. So once we add this here, let's go to our program.cs. I'm going to add a simple function called add authorization policies, and we're going to come down here and implement this function. So here is a simple function. What we're doing here in the services, we are adding authorization, and we're adding a simple policy called employee only. And in this policy, we're going to require the claim employee number, which we had given right here. So how do we use this policy? So let's go to our role controller here, for example. So I'm going to add a decoration called authorized policy set to employee only. So how does this work? So say you call this index method in the role page. So here the authorized tag says it has a policy of employee only. So the controller will go to program.cs and check for the employee only policy, and then the requirements for this policy, it basically says I need to require a claim called employee number. So this policy checks our login credentials, which we provide the user, and checks if there's a claim called employee number in the server. If yes, it will let them access the index method. If not, it will redirect them to the access denied page. So since we decorated this with employee only, now let's go here, actually comment this out. Let's build a project. And let's go and refresh our page. Let's log in. Let's go to our test.ca. Let's go to roles page. There we go. We don't get access because we did not provide this claim. Now let's go and uncomment this, rebuild. So let's come here and actually log out and log back in. So let's log in. Then let's go to roles page, and now we have it. So that's a simple a simple policy-based authentication. So the most common type of authorization we'll use is based on roles. For example, we will have admins, managers, users, customers, and we will restrict or allow access to pages and parts of our website based on their roles. So let's see how to implement it. So let's start by adding a couple of sample roles to our website. So let's add a migration called init roles. No, let's call it seed roles. That's the right name. So here we have a simple migration to populate our database with some sample values. So the first method we have here in this migration is seed roles, where we add 3 roles. The first is the administrator, the second is the manager, and the user. I've predefined the role IDs here so that it's easy to work with. And then the next one is, if you see the users, so we have 2 users here. I have user test2 and test3. And I have predefined the user IDs here so that it's easy for us to work with. And then finally, we have the seed user roles. Here, I'm assigning user 1 with a manager and a user role, and the user 2 has an admin role and also a manager role. Now let's run this migration and see if it works. Let's update the database. Okay, everything went through. Now let's check our database for the values. So here, let's check the ASP.NET roles table. We have 3 roles. Now let's check the user roles. And we have our user ID added to a couple of roles. Now let's check the users. And here we have it. We have the 2 users we added. So now once we added all the values to our database, now let's come here and get all the roles associated with our user right here and add it to our claims. So for that, let's get all the roles first. Let's call the sign-in manager.user manager.get roles, and we're going to pass our user. So this is an async method, so we'll have to await it. So let's do something. Now let's put a breakpoint right here and see if this function gets all our values. So before that, we'll actually have to come to our program.cs and add roles to our identity. So for that, we add roles, identity role, and that's it. So now let's build a project. Let's run it. Okay, we are logged in as test1. Let's log out. Let's log in again as test2. So test2 should have 2 roles. Let's see if it works. Let's log in. Okay, let's come to the next point, and here we have it. So here we have manager and user like we assigned. That's awesome. So now let's see how to add this to our claims. Say claims.add roles role claim. Oh, my bad. New role, new claim, and then we add it. All right, cool. So now let's add a couple of policies for us to validate our roles. For that, let's go to our program.cs right here. And then I'm going to add another authorization. and then we're going to add one for require admin. Here we're going to add a policy called require admin. Here we're going to require a role called administrator, and the second one is going to be manager. This policy will require a role manager. So now let's save. Okay, so to test our roles, I'm gonna add a couple of functions here in the controller for roles. So the first one is going to be the manager, and then followed by the admin. So this goes to the admin page, and this goes to the manager page, and then we're going to decorate it, the manager method, with the require manager policy from our require manager policy right here, and then we're going to add another policy to our admin. So the admin page will be authorized with the require admin, which will require the role administrator. Okay, and also I've added a couple of links to our header so that we can navigate easily. So let's build a project. Okay, cool. Now let's log in as test2. Test2 has the roles of a manager and a user. So let's save. Okay, so manager, accessible. Now let's try and go to the admin page. See, our controller tried to access a page which did not have credentials, or the user was not an admin, and we got denied access. Now let's log in as test3, which has admin access. So let's log in as test3, log in. Here we go. Wonderful. So for role-based authentication, there are multiple ways to do this. So we can either use a policy here, or we can add authorize roles, and we can set the roles directly here. For example, if the admin page needs an administrator or a manager role, we can set this here, and I'm gonna comment this out. So let's build this project. Okay, I'm gonna log in as our test2, which has a role of manager and user. So let's log in as test2, log in. I'm gonna go to the manager page. We got the manager page working. Let's go to the admin. There we go. So even though our test2 is only a manager and a user, since we put manager here, now the admin page authorizes our test2 user. So once we have everything working, the next step is to remove all our magic strings. In general, it's bad practice to have magic strings like what we have here, because if we change here, it has to change in every other place. That'll become a tedious process. So here, I added a simple class to our project called constants, and I extracted every magic string as a constant. So for example, I have the policies for require admin and manager, and for the roles, I have the 3 roles we have. And at runtime, this will be automatically added here, and we don't have to worry about managing. The same thing in our program.cs. Here we have a policy for require admin, and it requires a role of administrator. Everything is nice and clean. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, please leave in the comments box. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. All the code for this example and the lesson is in the description box. Please have a look. Thank you.